Hello and thank you for joining us with today's episode of the GrowVC Everyone Funding Startups podcast. I'm your host Marcus, and today we're taking a look at the current state of things with companies focused on growth and everything that revolves around them. Before moving on, let's look at the member highlight from the community this week, and that's a startup called abing. abing is a blog on technology, innovation and startups, and it's all about the most interesting and innovative startups in every area on a daily basis. You can follow abing in our funding community, as well as on ideabing.com, where you can follow their blog. Now let's get back to our main discussion point for this episode. I'm here with Kalam Ali, who's our insider from the financial world. And you also previously agreed to offer a positive outlook on things, so I'll try to hold you to that promise. So would you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
My name's Kalam. I guess that description of the inside world of finance is in terms of digital, I'm not quite sure what that means anymore, but certainly trying to figure out how to make finance work for digital companies and startups, internet companies, whatever you want to call them. And that's who I am. I'm with an investment bank at the moment, trying to see if we can make a product out of this, make a division out of this, and we've been looking at the space for about 2 years. Background is investment banking, did some tech deals, and across high growth areas, including clean tech and bio and digital. So now the main focus is really looking at digital. Exciting area, lots of experimentation, lots of new companies, but very changing landscape for financing. I think there needs to be, or they need to think very carefully about how you deal with what's a very unstructured space and the extent to which you can improve outcomes by infusing maybe a little bit of structure into it. So that's something I've been looking at quite closely for the last 2 years. That's who I am in a nutshell.
And the last 2 years have been fascinating in many ways. First we've gone down, we've come down with a crash, then we've gone up, and now we're slowly rebuilding. So from your point of view, how has this impacted or changed the field that you work in?
I think it's interesting to see the realism that's been injected into many startup ideas, where a lot of things I come across have gone through an iterative process of elimination of what works, what doesn't work. So in other words, it's the filtering mechanism that determines whether something is viable, which can be a conversation with your mates, to a conversation with some people who are already in the area doing something that you're doing, right up to doing enough research on what your market is and everything. The quality has certainly, in my view, gone up. The velocity at which things can happen has become faster. The variety of ideas is I think on the commercial side can be quite focused in terms of business models which have a better chance of actually succeeding as opposed to just blue sky thinking. But also the emergence of startup ideas, which I'm not entirely sure where they sit within an investment. The way we look at internet things as being investable, it's just cheaper to do stuff online now, and as opposed to, I don't know, 10 years ago when everyone was talking about investing in internet companies and then losing all their money horribly. The difference now is you can set up a website, you can host it on Rackspace, you can get yourself up and running for a very small amount of money. These just ideas need to be good, and sometimes the best ideas are not necessarily about profitability. They're more about things you can do. They're not necessarily about profitability on a global scale, but nevertheless they can be about some interesting things you can do at a local level with people. And we're starting to use this term social enterprises to describe some of these. But I think this trend in creating useful things for people isn't predicated on getting venture capital money, but is built on harnessing certain conversations but providing value that may not necessarily come from public services is certainly not going away. And this is the difference in terms of things I'm seeing that are coming out right now, where there are ideas that need a little bit of funding on the venture side are investable propositions to the extent that you can actually say that they might deliver a 10 times return on your initial investment and get bought out by someone in 1.5 to 2 years, or if they grow and they scale really well, they could become candidates for an IPO. The other end of this is and what I feel is becoming an important feature of the internet space, the digital space, are these guys and girls who are just coming up with some interesting ideas to facilitates something in between that venture side of investment funding and internet startups to what's going on in the real world, and trying to use the internet to basically make things work a little bit better. And examples could be, I don't know, you could look at School of Everything and Mind Apples and all the things those guys come out with in Social Innovation Camp, which I think is an interesting area in the UK, but it's also quite big in the US, and there's nothing to stop anyone else anywhere in the world coming up with a good idea that solves a certain problem using the internet and getting it off the ground. The cost is so low, so the spectrum of things has gone from just being investable opportunities online to things that could be useful that may not be investable but need to become commercially sustainable. So the challenge with some of these companies is, and they attract philanthropic investors in many cases when they start to grow. So I think the challenge with that side is always just trying to figure out how you can make them commercially sustainable and figure out what outcomes your investors are looking for in that space. Is this something that you've come across at GrowVC? Because I'm certainly seeing a lot of this, and I think there's a spectrum of opportunities in the 2 years. This area is highly unstructured, changing quite a lot. But there's a spectrum of things that are happening that are not always investable in the traditional sense of looking at investment, where you get your 5 to 10 times return, but more a case of how does this help society?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that's a factor of many, many different dimensions and things.
Mm.
For one, there's less capital out there. And
Yeah.
especially if you're outside the big centers like Silicon Valley and those places where they're actually, even though they've slowed down as well, but they still have that capital moving. But if you're, like you said, if you're somewhere else,
Mm.
then you still have the opportunity to get your business going, but you
Yeah.
might not have the opportunity of getting that first, say, 3 million right off and then building it. So I
Yeah.
think lots of people and lots of startups are realizing that, hey, we don't have the money, but we don't really need it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's kind of this illusion that if you have the access to the money, you might go chasing that. But if you don't have that, it won't really distract you from what you're actually meant to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the thing as well with most ideas now. The proposition, you need to deliver some level of validation towards it in order to attract attention from potential investors. And so we've seen, for example, in the last year, Kickstarter and Indiegogo really taking off. They're not the first. There was another site, I think, what is it, fundable.org or .com, I can't remember, but they provided a mechanism. They provided a crowdsourced funding mechanism that was contributions based, but I think the Fundable disappeared because the founders fell out. And it was just one of those crazy things where you had this amazing website that did amazing things, allowed people to get their creative ideas off the ground. But then it just disappeared because of the founders. And that's one of the things about internet startups, I guess. It's that you can have a really good idea, but the cost right now is so low that you could have a